Well, hello everybody, and thanks for joining us again. The next episode of the show with David Burrows Live. Of course, I'm David Burrows, and we're here broadcasting live from Coffee Culture in downtown Sarnia. And just before we begin, I want to say thanks to a couple of sponsors of our show. Of course, Coffee Culture down here at 130 Lockheil Street. And also, I want to say a special thank you to David Noel from Investors Group, who supports everything we do here on the show and throughout the Video Show Network. So thanks again to our sponsors. This week, I have been looking forward to having this young lady on here. I'm not even sure that 30 minutes would be enough time to talk about all the wonderful things she's done in the photography world, the art world, and music, and well, there's just a lot to talk about. So Melissa Upfold, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you very much for having me tonight, Dave.
Yeah, it's great to be talking with you, to share your story with all of our viewers. Of course, you and I have gotten to know each other just in the past, a little while, half a year maybe. I don't know, how do I begin with you? It's art all around, right?
Pretty much, yep.
But you're from Sarnia?
I am, born and raised.
That's right, okay. Yep. And you never really left, did you?
I left for Carleton. I went to university for 4 years in Carleton and Ottawa.
Okay.
And I studied history and religion.
Right. Yeah. What attracted you to that?
Actually, I had a teacher at Skits who really pushed me into history, and she was a great teacher, so she inspired me. Okay,
and then that's now leading you into the arts. You're a self-taught photographer. Let's talk about that first.
So my dad was a photography teacher at Lambton College when I was a child, and he really just kind of left the arts world and didn't want me to be an artist. So when
Why is that?
I don't know why, really. I think that he was just, maybe he had had enough himself.
Okay.
He wanted me to go to school and go to university and get a job. And
didn't want to be a starving artist, so to speak?
So to speak.
Right. Well, it is a challenge, right? Being an artist and trying to make a living at that.
It's very much a challenge,
yeah. But you've been able to overcome that, it seems.
Yep. So after I came back from university, I decided to start picking up the camera for the first time. My great uncle passed away and left me my first 35mm film camera. Okay. Kind of from there, it just took off.
Right. So brag about yourself a little bit with this. I know that's hard to do sometimes, but we want you to share with everybody some of the awards and things you've done with photography.
So I started photography, I guess, really technically when I was in university at Carleton. My last year there, I won the Carleton University Photography Club first and second place award in their yearly contest.
Right.
That's kind of my first taste of winning an award, I guess.
Yeah.
And then when I moved back, I entered the Sarnia Photography Club contest and also placed second and third in that.
Right.
And then I was like, I'm not going to do contests anymore. I'm just going to do shows.
Just going to do so what kind of photography do you do? I mean, a lot of photographers, they might do weddings or they might do musicians. What's your photography about?
I'm kind of all over the place, to be honest with you. I started out as a band photographer. So I would shoot different bands around who were playing and go out. And then that got very tiring after a while.
Yeah. Okay.
So then I tried going into more family weddings type of stuff. It just really wasn't for me. I'm more of like a fine art and fashion photographer. Right. Do portraiture, and I do like doing events still, as long as it's not till 2 a.m.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Oh, that's the tiring part you're talking about.
That is the tiring part.
Yes, I can attest to that. That's a bit of work being out late.
It is, and you do have to elbow your way through people a lot when you're doing band stuff. So having more control and being just, doing my own stuff and stuff I'm interested in is a lot easier. Right, yeah.
So now you're a little more focused on what you're doing with photography. Yeah. You've been published, though, as well. So this is, like I say, you're quite a long story, as far as what else you do. You're doing poetry. You've been published. Talk more about that. You've been published all across Canada.
Yes, I have. So in photography and writing as well. So I started out writing when I was a little kid. I think a lot of poets start out as closet writers.
Sure.
I think we all do.
I might have some lying around somewhere.
And then I really held off until I think it was my third year of university, and I thought, I'm going to submit a poem for the first time. So I looked around to some local magazines in Ottawa, and I found this one called Bywords that had been around for a good 20 years. And they seemed like a good fit for a starting poet. And they accepted my first poem, and I was so excited because I'd never been published before. And then I found out later that year that I actually won their award that they have every year called the John Newlove Poetry Award.
Right.
And it's for an Ottawa poet, John Newlove. He's a fantastic writer. And because of that, I got to have a chapbook that they released through their magazine.
Okay.
And I got to read at the Ottawa International Writers Festival, which was pretty exciting.
You talk about exciting. Let's focus on that for a minute, because you've overcome a lot of challenges in this, and one of them is public speaking, right?
Definitely.
And that was really your first time of. I know you've shared it with me before, but I'd like to share that story with everybody.
So when I found out that I'd won that award, I had never actually performed my writing in front of anybody ever before. And I found that there was a reading that Carleton had a week before I had to read at Ottawa International in front of 250, 300 people.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a really scary reality when you've never done it before. So I went out to this more like smaller reading that Carleton was having. And I remember I got up and I was sitting down and the guy was miking me up, getting me ready. And I was like, I'm so scared. I'm so petrified to do this right now. And I was like, I have to read in front of 200 people in a week. And he's like, oh, don't worry. It'll be easier. It'll get easier, Melissa. And I was like, oh, I don't know about that.
So how did you get through that?
Oh, nerves. I just got it together. And the first time I did it, I failed, honestly. Like I read Ottawa International twice. The first time, looking back, probably wasn't the greatest experience. Right. But then I got a year where I got to practice and actually learn how to perform in front of people. And I came back to Sarnia actually during that year and started attending spoken word and got a lot of advice from local writers and went back, nailed it at the next time.
Yeah. So you started and you just got through it.
Yeah.
And, you know, it's funny we talk about failing, but really you have to fail your way through some things.
Definitely.
And that's what's brought you to some of the things you're doing today.
Yep.
You mentioned spoken word. Share what that is about.
So spoken word has been going on in Sarnia for 20 years, but it's something that's in a lot of communities where you can kind of go out and share your poetry or perform a piece. And it's great because it does give you the reality now for writers is you do have to be able to go out and promote your own work.
Right.
So being able to perform your own writing and to actually be able to do it in a way that gets it across is really important. And spoken word has popped up in lots of communities, and it's a great way to practice to get ready for the real world of publication.
It's kind of like a Toastmasters for poets.
Sort of, yeah. It's like almost like an open mic, kind of like what you would have for bands, and instead of that, it's for poetry.
Right.
But we have lots of musicians who come out to events like that too, because music and poetry are so related with the writing. So
how do you what do you write about? What your poetry? Do you have something specific that you focus on, or does it just kind of come to you in an aha moment?
It's mostly just an aha moment. I will write fragments, I guess, of poems, and then I'll piece them together later. There's a few writers groups locally, too, that you can attend that help edit. And sometimes I'll just go online and share it with people and see what they have to say, what works, what doesn't. It can be a different process for different poems, I think.
Right. Do you ever have any poetry? I mean, I know I've talked to a lot of poets or writers that I know, and they poet away, but they don't share it with anybody.
Yes.
Do you have some of those?
I definitely have a lot of those.
Why is that? Is it just that that's just personal to yourself? And
I think one of the reasons that poets tend to publish a lot when they're older is because we write a lot about the things that are happening around us. And then people, you get nervous sharing that stuff about maybe your friends and family and having it published and making it available.
Fear of embarrassment, maybe.
Or, maybe it's personal and it's not something that you should be sharing right away. So you tend to closet that one for a while.
Right. You've really grown, as you said, as a speaker and as a writer as well. But do you have a favorite thing that you write about?
Usually I like to write about people. I think people is my main focus in photography as well as writing. The nuances of people, the psychology of them, the interplay between me as a writer and a photographer and them as the subject.
Right.
And sometimes I tend to write poems that have nothing even to do with me, more like experience that I know people have gone through.
An observation.
Yeah, more observational, definitely, as a photographer and a poet.
Right.
I like to watch things and observe.
Right. Let's talk a little bit more about some of the shows you've been involved with, in Ottawa. You had some things here at Cheeky Monkey in Sarnia, and Coffee Culture.
Yeah,
and some things. So share some more of that.
So my very first show actually that I ever had was at Cheeky Monkey when First Friday started out.
Right.
It was a collection of photographs of bands that I had photographed over the year, and I think it was their first gallery show that they actually had at Cheeky Monkey, so it was a while back.
Yeah.
But since then, I've shown here at Coffee Culture. I had a show called Nighttime Downtown, where I lived downtown, and I actually went out at about 2 or 3 a.m. with my tripod and just photographed what the culture of downtown was like. And I had another show at Stardust called Pause Not Bypass, which kind of focused more on, the stop and smell the roses kind of adage that we have, where we tend to walk past things that are really beautiful that we just don't notice.
What kind of things?
Like things on the ground that maybe you wouldn't even think are beautiful, but if they're framed correctly, they can come across as being very striking, and I think people just tend to walk right past those.
Right.
So the show really focused on those very unique kind of moments. And then separate from photography, I've had other types of shows. I was part of the Emerging Artist series that Gallery Lambton did before they moved over to JNAG here.
Right.
I had a show called Being Born is as Easy as Dying, and it was an installation of a zine that I actually had for 3 years here in Sarnia, where I published writers from Canada, the United States, and internationally. And then the gallery asked if I would do an installation of it, which was actually really neat. It was in the Sadie Knowles gallery, and they gave me, full, just do what you want, Melissa, kind of thing. Yeah, it was great. It was a lot of fun, and it was a really great experience.
What did you learn from that?
I learned how hard it is to put on an art show. That is one thing I
What's
definitely
the tough part
learned.
about it?
I think the tough part is separating the artistic component. As an artist, you want things to be a certain way, but in all reality, you have timelines and deadlines to meet that maybe don't really go with the artistic approach that you would use normally at home. So I remember even for that show, like probably 20 minutes before I had to open it for First Friday, Dave Moore coming in and being like, Melissa, it's about 20 minutes to go. I was like, oh no.
What's going on?
Yeah. I pretty much learned that in order to have a show, you do have to really stick to that business side as well, which is hard as an artist.
Yeah.
But
why is that hard?
I think that as an artist, you want to believe you have all this time and you want it to be a certain way in your head. You have this idea, but then when it comes to reality, you do have to deal with someone else's space, someone else's lighting. You might not have all the materials you want, so you really have to just accept that there's only like a certain kind of spot you can get to, I guess.
Right. Is it tough to compromise sometimes in that situation? Because when it comes to your own art, and you know what I mean? Like, how do you adapt to that?
I find personally what I like to do is go into the space where I know I'm going to be showing. Like when I came to Coffee Culture and showed, I would just sit in this space and I would try and figure out, how many pieces am I going to be able to show here? How am I going to lay it out so when people come in, they look at it and they actually want to stop and look at my pieces of art. So I think that really planning and getting into the space ahead of time has been very helpful to me. And then just sitting down, making a timeline and being like, you have to follow this, and almost splitting your mind up into this business version and this art version of yourself, where you just have to be like, nope, you have to compromise.
Yeah. I think it's a good point you bring up, that splitting that business side of things up, because I think a lot of artists, I've talked to some artists where they're like, they feel bad for charging money for what they do because you love it so much.
Exactly.
But at the same time, the bills got to get paid.
They definitely do. And it is a struggle, I think, for a lot of artists, because they get into it, just like you said, because they love it and it's something that they're really passionate about. But at the end of the day, it is something that's worth something and has to be respected and valued, just like any other kind of business should be.
Right. And that's a great philosophy. And I think that sort of leads us to what we're going to talk about next, which is a show that you're putting together. Because you want to promote, which is another thing that she does. She does so many wonderful things. So you're a promoter of the arts as well, and you're in that. You're kind of teaching that, hey, there is value here, especially and right here in Sarnia, right?
Right here in Sarnia, there's a lot of value in Sarnia. So I'm putting on Local, which is a curated art show. We have a month-long mural installation as part of that, and a performance showcase, and an after party. I mean, it's going to be a night full of very exciting things, but the intent of it is mostly, as you said, to promote these artists, to show that there is a lot of amazing talent in Sarnia-Lambton, and that you shouldn't have to pay a fee or have a huge, long CV or been shown in Toronto or London or whatever. It's to get a good show and to be treated with that respect.
Okay, so let me stop you there for a minute, and I'm going to, if I'm crossing the line,
oh no, you go ahead.
But there's not already is there not space in, okay, so we've got an art gallery across the street.
We do, yep, I can see it.
We've got the Lawrence House, and we've got some other locations here. So what's different about what you're doing?
So the difference for us is, again, you don't have to have this CV, which is usually for artists, you do have to have shown somewhere else.
Okay.
Most places, when you're accepted into a show, or even if you're being considered for a gallery, it's like having a resume, essentially.
Okay.
So if you don't have that a lot of the time, or if you don't have the credentials, which you need at a place like a Class A art gallery, you have to be shown, I believe, nationally. I don't know.
Okay, so let me stop you there. Yeah. And I really don't know the answer to this question. Yeah. So how do you get into those shows? It seems it's almost like the first person applying for a job. How do I get experience if you won't give me an opportunity, right?
And that's what Local is the opportunity, because you really can, and it is it's between being in a rock and a hard place for a lot of artists. I mean, that is the feeling when you come out of school. How do I get a job with a good company? Well, how do I get an art show with a good gallery?
Right.
And it's a very difficult thing. I mean, if you don't just get handed an opportunity, basically, or somebody, chances are you're not going to get that.
Right.
And that's the reality of it. The art world's very small wherever you go. And
right. It's undervalued.
I believe it is, yeah.
Yeah.
And the idea of, putting restrictions on people to have their artwork shown, especially in a community like Sarnia-Lambton, it's asking a lot when we're still building our community here as an art scene. So for the Lawrence House, for instance, you have to be a member to be part of their shows, which means you have to pay a fee. To be in the JNAG, you have to have certain credentials.
Right. And don't get me wrong,
those are great places.
There's value in that,
for
right?
Sure they are.
There's value in that. We're not knocking that at all by any means.
Not at all.
But there's a piece missing.
I feel that there is a piece missing. That opportunity that you were talking about, which, levels the playing field, I guess, so to speak.
Okay. Yep.
And that's what we tried to do with Local. Was artists were able to submit from April to May, and then 2 curators went through blindly, and we chose out of, I believe, over 200 pieces of artwork.
Right.
And it didn't matter if you had a CV. It didn't matter if you had shown at any of these other places. What mattered was whether or not your art was good, and whether or not it fit with the show.
Right.
So that's leveling it, I guess, so to speak.
So what other kinds of things are you going to do to make sure that this happening? And you're going to include music in this as well. Let's talk about some of the artists. Talk more about the event.
Yeah. So I'm so excited about the event. On June 3rd, it's part of First Friday. We're backed by the Lambton County Creative Fund, First Friday, and several other community.
Right. Sure.
members.
You said that's June 3rd, First Friday.
June
okay.
3rd,
Right.
First Friday. Yep. So. On that night, it will be the actual gallery show will open. It's a pop-up one-night show, and all the art will be hung in 100 Christina. And in that evening, we're going to be having a local performance showcase of 3 different musicians. Jonathan Chamberlain, Jacob Dressy, and Chad Cusack will be playing 30 to 40 minute sets.
Right.
And then in between them, we'll be having Kara Smith, David Plain, and Debbie Oakenhill, who are all poets, and they'll be reading for about 10 minutes.
Okay.
And then one thing that, as an artist who's practiced in Sarnia for a long time, that always bothered me is that whenever I'd have a First Friday show, I could never get out to any of the other shows.
Yeah.
So we have extended the hours for that evening, and we're going to have, at 9:30, the band Weird Neighbors will be on. And they'll be playing, and we're going to reveal the mural at that time. And so it'll be extended hours till I think about 11 or 12 that night. So people can come by, and other artists can network and meet people.
Right. And then you're going to get a chance to, as you say, you're going to get out and check things out around the rest of the First Friday.
So.
And again, First Friday coming up June 3rd. I think I think we've got a spot here we can show. Roger, we got the flyer there that we can show everybody for June 3rd, First Friday.
There you go.
Again, and that's exciting, you know.
Yeah, I'm so excited.
There's always obstacles and struggles along the way. What kind of things do you? What would you say is the biggest challenge to planning something and having it pulled off, I guess?
There's always definitely a discrepancy between what you think is going to happen and what actually happens. And I think the biggest challenge that I've had is just simply my expectations for the show were a lot higher than what I think this first year could meet.
Okay.
Let's put it that way.
Yeah.
I mean,
fair.
we all have ideas of what we think, even with like the gallery show situation. Like, you have an idea of what you want to have happen, but sometimes you do have to compromise, and you do have to expect that, you know, certain things you thought were going to come true, just not this year,
right.
maybe next year, maybe the year after.
I can relate. Trust me.
Exactly. I'm an idea person,
right.
So it's just like
compromising without compromising integrity, though.
For sure. And you definitely have to know where to compromise and on what to compromise, so that the finished product, which is the most important thing, the actual show, the mural being finished, and showing off all this wonderful artwork and all the performances, that actually happens.
Yeah. So what won't you compromise?
What won't I compromise? I don't know, not a lot.
That's a tough question.
That is a really tough question.
Because and I bring up integrity because, you know, there's needing to get paid, and there's needing to pay the bills before you get paid. But you only want to go so far without compromising your abilities. Mm-hmm. But you don't want to, like, how do you find that line?
I think the line for me with this show is that I wasn't willing to compromise on the professional level that I wanted it to be at. The questions I got asked a lot was, are people actually going to be rejected?
Right.
Right. And this is a common thing. If I was to go into a show in London, I would expect to be rejected.
I would hope that if I put something in, you would reject me, because I don't draw stick people.
I don't draw them very well either, I'll be honest.
Well, there has to be, obviously, not everybody, you know.
Exactly. So, I mean, that was a big thing, and it was hard to do. I didn't really want to reject anybody, but at the same time, to keep it at the level that I feel it needs to be at, I did have to do that, and that's something I was not willing to compromise on.
Not everybody gets on Canadian Idol, right?
No, exactly. And, I mean, without that, we wouldn't be challenging artists to produce, you know, even better and better and better work. So for next year now, maybe the people who are rejected, they'll go back and they'll work on their art and they'll keep progressing and getting better and better and better. And that's kind of the goal with this show, is to encourage the community to keep challenging themselves and exposing them to art that I didn't even know some of the art existed that we got for intake. Like, it's amazing. Where did
the intake come from? Like, there's a lot of art's very popular in the high schools.
It is. Surprisingly, a lot of the people were 30, 40 years old.
Is that right? Okay.
About 20 to 40 was the range, I would say, for most of the people who submitted.
Right. Is it fair to say that maybe you're going to attract some artists? I think I know the answer to this, but you're going to attract some artists that are hiding at home?
I think so.
And then maybe this is hey, maybe I could do that.
And we've had a few people like that who've messaged me personally, and I've walked them through the steps, just because it isn't something to be feared, and it is accessible, and that's the point. I mean, I think when people see gallery show and curated and they see all this stuff, it's very scary and intimidating.
Yeah.
But it's really not. And
it sounds more encouraging.
It does in a sense, but I think to artists, it's almost like, what if I get rid, like no one wants that feeling. I think it will bring out a lot of artists, and I think it has. Like 3/4 of the people who submit, I don't even know them. I've never even heard their names.
That's a good thing.
And yeah, I've been a practicing artist for 10 years here, so for me to not know these people.
You kind of know some people.
I know pretty much everybody, so yeah, I mean, yes. 3/4 of them I didn't know at all.
Yeah.
Never even
Have you reached out into the high schools or the educational system or the college? Or
we reached out to the college. We haven't gone to the high school, but I think as it grows, hopefully if it's a yearly thing, I hope.
Hopefully, I think it's going to be.
I really do think so too, and I think even if I don't carry it on, I hope someone else can.
Okay.
Because it's so important for our community. But I think going and having like maybe even a high school version of it, or having, there's so many possibilities for where this show could go.
Yeah.
Like it's almost limitless.
I think it'd be a great. I actually, I'll mention the Lawrence House. I was there not too long ago, and they have a display on there right now.
Yeah, by the high school
showcasing
students.
some of the high school students, and it's fantastic. It really
go check
out at the Lawrence House.
For sure, it is, and it's amazing how much talent is coming. But I think there's a discrepancy there. Like there is all this talent in high school, but then a lot of those people leave because there aren't the venues for them to show in. And I think
you say leaves. You mean they're moving out of town?
Yes, they're leaving, and I get that question a lot. Why do all the young people leave?
Common question in Sarnia. Let's be honest about that.
It's a very common question, and I get asked a lot why I stay, and I stay because I see the potential here to keep those young people, or at least to bring them back once they've gone and gotten educated. But it's providing them with the right space and the right venues to be able to come back to. And I think that local is the first step to allowing that to happen.
Right. Do you think, but the other side of the challenge is while there's value in some of the great local artists, is there enough people in this area to financially appreciate them?
That's a good question. I think there's a lot of support in our community for artists, surprisingly more than I think most people expect. Yep. And there's a lot of people who come in from London, Chatham, Bayfield for the shows that we have here. And yeah, I think financially they have the money.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think there is enough draw. Well, it's important,
right? Because you can have
you can have
100,000 great artists, but if there's nobody around to buy, that's.
I think with something like Loc 2, we could almost reach out to places like London and draw those people in, so that we could, have those investors, I guess we'll call them, come in and purchase that artwork. But not just that. I think a lot of the artists here, they usually have fine art, but then they all have more of a skill, we'll say, like photography. Like the event that we're having will be great in the sense that people can actually network not only with other art, can meet potential clients, they can sell their artwork, which I didn't mention this, but it's also a really important thing about local is that we're not taking a commission from the artists.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, like we want it just to be about promoting the artwork and the artists getting what they deserve. And so
here's a question for you then. So how are you paying the bills for the show?
So we have been backed by some sponsors. Lambton County Creative Fund is happily sponsoring us.
That's awesome.
And I'm really excited about that. First Friday Magazine. And then we've had lots of great donations for the mural. Home Hardware is sponsoring us. Ask Guy Graphics.
Yep.
And I believe there's one more.
AskGuy.ca.
AskGuy.ca.
Yeah.
And Princess Auto as well.
That's great.
Yeah.
Not to say that you couldn't welcome more money,
more
sponsors,
yes, for
right?
sure. Especially in the future. It would be awesome.
That's great. So once again, coming up first Friday, June the 3rd, is that show going to be happening? And we'll check that out for sure. We got to start wrapping things up here, but just before we go, you do some volunteer work.
I do a lot of volunteer work.
I know. I say 30 minutes is not going to be enough to talk about Melissa Upfold. We'll have to have you back here, but talk about some of the volunteer work that you're doing.
So I've done a lot of volunteer work in the community. Local as a show itself, I'm doing completely as a volunteer because I care about our community and I want to promote the artists. But I've volunteered with the Lawrence House in the past. The Organization for Literacy, I've done photography work for them. It's really fun times with them. I got to go when Red Green came. I went with my dad and we got to meet him and photograph him.
I'm jealous. I'd love to meet Red Green.
He was really cool, actually. I really liked him. And
do you really talk like that?
No. He was a really cool guy, though. He's fun to meet. And even my work with Fix Magazine, which was a local kind of cultural and arts magazine, I did that as a volunteer as well. But it was really neat because you get to meet so many people. Like I got to meet the band Mother, Matt Good, like just some really amazing people, and volunteering in our community, it gives you so many opportunities, and I don't think people realize that it's such a great way to network, to meet people and have experiences that you probably would never ever have.
I couldn't agree with you more. I wish we had more time to talk with you, but Melissa, thank you so much. Melissa Upfold joining us. Find her on Facebook, and is there an email address or anything?
Yeah, calculatedcolor@gmail.com, or
Okay.
you can visit us at Calculated Color or local curated art show and mural project.
Perfect. We'll post all that on our Facebook page as well. You can check out the show Sarnia on Facebook. Go to our network, TVSN World on Facebook or tvsn.ca. Once again, Melissa, thank you so much for being here. Really appreciate your time. I want to thank you all for watching. Boy, there's maybe we'll have to start extending the times here on the show, but I want to say special thank you to Coffee Culture down here at 130 Lock Hill Street. We'll be back here again every Sunday night, 8 o'clock Eastern. And also special thanks once again to David Noel from Investors Group. And of course, thanks to all of you for watching. Next week, I'll have another special guest, someone doing some positive things here in the community. But for now, I'm David Burrows, broadcasting for the Video Show Network. Take care. We'll see you next week.